On February 19, 1945, some 70,000 U.S. Marines landed on the Japanese fortified island of Iwo Jima. This battle was one of our empire's greatest victories, or so we are told. It was a minor tactical victory, but a strategic defeat. The U.S. military devoted tremendous resources to seize this insignificant island where it suffered more casualties than the Japanese. More Japanese were killed, but seriously wounded Marines were burdensome since they needed food, housing, and medical care. 2 U.S. Navy aircraft carriers were lost, and 3 elite Marine Corps divisions mauled in a massive ambush by a collection of second-rate Japanese security units. All the Japanese aircraft at Iwo Jima had been destroyed months before this landing, and the 2 rarely used airfields were heavily damaged by American bombing. 2 Navy destroyers permanently circled the island to engage aircraft and intercept resupply boats. The stranded Japanese garrison struggled to survive with small garden plots and cisterns to catch rainwater, while sulfur fumes and occasional bombing raids made life miserable. This invasion was unnecessary, and Pentagon politics are to blame for this debacle. The U.S. Army Air Force was lobbying to become an independent service, and the upcoming invasion of Japan would be the last and biggest battle of the war. U.S. Navy carrier-based fighter bombers were attacking Japan, but the Army Air Force fighter bombers could reach no targets in Japan. However, its new P-51 Mustangs could reach some of Japan from Iwo Jima. The U.S. Marine Corps had grown into an Army-sized force during World War II. Those planning a post-war military assumed the Marines would shrink dramatically in size or be absorbed into the U.S. Army, which had conducted more amphibious operations. The Marines sought a big victory on Iwo Jima with no assistance from the Army to impress the U.S. Congress. As a result, Army, Air Force, and Marine Corps generals argued for the invasion of Iwo Jima. They predicted it would take the Marines just 3 days to secure it, with Army and Air Corps support from the Marianas, with the loss of around 600 Americans killed. Lieutenant General Holland M. Smith was assigned to command the Marine Ground Forces and protested the plan. He knew that attacking a small island overlooked by a large, steep mountain was unwise. Smith knew from previous experience that aerial bombardment was a poor substitute for direct naval gunfire. Sailors on ships close offshore can observe a landing 24/7 and stay in contact with spotters ashore to quickly engage targets as they are identified when they are fired upon the landing force. Smith was convinced that heavy aerial bombardment would not be sufficient, stating, "We'll catch 7 times of hell on the beaches, and that will be just the beginning." Smith was proven correct as the Iwo Jima landings began after a little naval gunfire bombardment. After Marines hit the beach, the Japanese rolled out guns from caves in Mount Suribachi and opened fire on the Marines and the Navy ship supporting the landing. The Marines went ashore to find 21,000 Japanese dug into a fortified island. An intense battle raged for 36 days that resulted in 6,800 Marines, soldiers, and sailors dead. U.S. Navy admirals were upset at this unneeded Iwo Jima sideshow. Okinawa had been chosen as a primary staging base for the invasion of Japan. It had a seaport, big airfields, warehouses, and plenty of fresh water. Small Iwo Jima had no harbor for ships to offload to stage materials and support airfields. It had no fresh water, so most would have to be delivered. The Navy was assembling munitions and material for the invasion of Okinawa and did not want it wasted on Iwo Jima. Admirals were promised all 6 Marine divisions for the invasion of Okinawa and worried that the 3 landed on Iwo Jima 40 days prior would not be ready. The rationale for taking Iwo Jima was to provide fighter bases to escort B-29s. But B-51 fighters could reach Japan from Okinawa too. Japanese fighter coverage was scarce and the B-29s were rarely intercepted because they flew too high and fast. Moreover, most Japanese targets were beyond the range of even the newest American fighter, the P-51D Mustang. These lacked proper navigational equipment, so B-29s escorted them. P-51s flew missions from Iwo Jima beginning in April 1945. but operating at maximum range meant that the smallest engine problem, fuel miscalculation, weather diversion, or combat damage resulted in ditching at sea. Losses mounted as the number of fighters based on Iwo Jima grew. On June 1, 1945, 144 Mustangs from the 15th, 21st, and 506 fighter groups ran into bad weather and lost 27 aircraft, with 25 pilots missing, the most single-day P-51 losses of the war. The 7th Fighter Command on Iwo Jima abandoned the pointless fighter escort mission and flew low to attack any Japanese aircraft encountered and strafed airfields. It claimed 452 Japanese aircraft destroyed in the air and on the ground, but 131 P-51s were lost and 121 men killed or captured. Dozens more were lost to accidents operating from the small, dusty, unpaved airfields on Iwo Jima. P-51 missions to Japan were rare the last 2 months of the war due to high losses and a lack of good targets. After just 3 B-59 escort missions, it was decided that losses did not justify the need. A new justification arose for seizing Iwo Jima. Several damaged B-29s had landed on Iwo Jima, so it was claimed that Iwo Jima was invaded to provide a vital emergency landing field for crippled B-29s. In a much-quoted statistic, the Air Force reported that 2,251 superforts had landed on Iwo, and because each one carried 11 crewmen, a total of 24,761 airmen were saved. This lie was later exposed by Marine Captain Robert S. Burrell, a history instructor at the U.S. Naval Academy. In an article in the October 2004 issue of Journal of Military History called Breaking the Cycle of Iwo Jima Mythology, he later wrote similar articles, one is linked below, and wrote a book about this subject, The Ghost of Iwo Jima, where he explained that most of the B-29 landings were not for emergencies, but invented for training or to take on extra fuel or bombs. Most damaged B-29s that landed on Iwo could have made it back to their home bases in the Mariana Islands. Many that landed at Iwo Jima were so badly damaged they were scrapped anyway, and if they had ditched at sea, their crews would have been rescued by the U.S. Navy. Burrell concluded that Iwo Jima was helpful to the American bombing effort and saved the lives of a few hundred airmen, but not worth the price in blood or the logistical burden on the Navy that hampered the important landing on Okinawa. Defenders of official history insist that Iwo Jima was needed for the planned invasion of Japan, but the invasion force was to assemble and depart from the Marianas, Okinawa, and the Philippines. Iwo Jima was of no value without a harbor or freshwater source. The U.S. military wisely bypassed most of the Japanese army at dozens of island strongholds, including the entire island of Formosa. It also ignored the 20,000 Japanese troops at other island strongholds near Iwo Jima, like Chichijima and Hahajima, that also had sizable airfields and radar warning stations. The Navy also suffered from the Iwo Jima debacle. Since the Army Air Force promised air cover, there was no large Navy carrier task force to support this operation, only the USS Saratoga and 5 smaller escort carriers. On February 19th, 32 Japanese kamikazes swooped down on the landing fleet. A new escort carrier, the USS Bismarck C, was hit twice and quickly sank with the loss of 318 sailors. 3 Navy destroyers were also lost at Iwo Jima. The USS Saratoga, with 3 destroyer escorts, deployed northward to better protect the landing force. On February 21st, it was attacked by aircraft and kamikazes and seriously damaged. She lost 123 of her crew dead or missing, as well as 192 wounded, with 36 aircraft destroyed. The crippled Saratoga was sent back to the States for repairs. The U.S. Army played a role too. Mounting casualties were so embarrassing that Marine generals declared the island secure weeks before fighting ended. The Army's 147th Infantry Regiment arrived as planned in May for occupation duty, but was left to deal with the thousands of Japanese diehards still hiding in caves. This regiment suffered 24 killed, 54 wounded, and 6 missing in its first month of occupation duty on the island. Military disasters are covered up or spun into great victories. Generals invented many reasons to land B-29s at Iwo Jima and ordered dangerous P-51 missions of little value. The vital landing in Okinawa was delayed and conducted without the 3 Marine divisions badly mauled on Iwo Jima. And P-51s flew missions to Japan from Okinawa starting in July 1945. Nevertheless, the Battle of Iwo Jima was sold as a great victory, complete with the John Wayne movie and a huge statue in Washington, D.C. The Marines did a great job and fought bravely, but Iwo Jima was a Japanese trap, and thousands of Americans were slaughtered because of this unnecessary political sideshow.